How was that £1 million project funded? You're crazy.
The planning was shocking. They had missed something massive.
I feel like the question people are going to want to know is...
I don't really trust him.
And we are back. We're back like we never left because we have been hitting you with a new episode each and every week consistently. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe with those notifications on so that you get alerted every time we upload another video. Anyway, without further ado, let me introduce my desk. Dennis, how you doing?
I'm very good, brother. How's it going?
I'm good. Dennis is another person I had to fight with to get on the pods. I literally, again, I had to call him. He said, I don't know. I said, Dennis, listen, you got to come and talk about what you're doing because you're doing some amazing things. Founder of Ratio Property Group, Ratio Developments. You've been in property for over a decade now. Started 2013, property investor, proper developer. And we're going to get onto what a proper developer actually looks like and does. But for you, as a starting point, why was property something that you wanted to get into?
Oh, that's a good question to start with. You know, I always wanted to get into property. I just understood that it was a vehicle for wealth creation, legacy creation, building assets. But I had several businesses beforehand. I kind of like a serial entrepreneur, if you could say. Had several businesses beforehand. And it was always sort of like property was going to be something I got onto. So I think I reached a point where I had to take the jump.
So you see, you mentioned you always understood that it was good for wealth creation and kind of building that long-term wealth. But I don't think that's like commonplace that everybody understands that. Where do you think your understanding of that concept came from?
I'm not sure where it came from. It's just something I guess I'd always been interested in. It's really strange. I've always been interested in mortgages from when I was young. My mum used to say I used to call them mortgages, and I was really interested in mortgages. So I had an interest that I didn't understand, and I guess I understood that. What I did understand was that people who created wealth had property, so that there was a link there.
I think that's it. I think for a lot of people, it is your first kind of exposure in growing up sometimes can be go into that, whether it's an uncle, an auntie, a family friend, a school friend, and they've got that nice house and you're like, oh, this is kind of what success looks like almost. Yeah. But you mentioned being a serial entrepreneur. So pre-property, what was your background?
Well, professionally, I worked for companies like Diesel, Denim, and a few different sort of fashion wholesalers. I used to work in fashion. I worked for an IT reseller. They used to deal with like US military and stuff like that. But business-wise, I've done everything. I used to sell cars. I used to have a storage yard facility. I had a health and wellness business that I ran for about 4 or 5 years. So I've done a few different things.
Yeah, and I think with running all of those different businesses, what common factors did you kind of start to pick up that, you know, these are things that regardless of the business, regardless of the asset that you're selling, these are things that can allow a business to be successful?
You know, one of the things I learned early on is you have a business and you want to have all this stuff. You want to have an office, and I realized all that stuff is noise. You don't need any of that stuff. The most important thing is to sell. That is it. If you're selling, you'll be all right. You know, you can have poor back office, you can have poor systems in place, but if you're selling, you know, you'll be able to keep going long enough to put in these things in place. I always think that, you know, develop a relationship with the customer and sell.
I guess, yeah, if you can make money, all of the other things you can then basically buy in the expertise. So if your back end office, if your back end, like you mentioned, is all over the place, if your systems are, you can, at the point in which you're making money, you have the ability to pay for it and solve those problems. Whereas if you've got no money,
you ain't got business.
Exactly that. And I think a lot of people, when they're starting out businesses, they get over focused on small details, like my website's got to look amazing, or my logo's got to be perfect.
Exactly. None of that matters. You know, your logo, I need to have a good logo. No, you need to sell something. Once you sell something, you know, you could draw a piece, use a pen and draw something on a piece of card and say, that's my logo.
Yeah, I think like this logo, not like the whole thing, but this concept of this logo for the Property by Kazy, that probably was probably like a tenner on Fiverr. Like they just did like sort of at the beginning, we need something just like a house, get it done and actually start doing the business.
My logo isn't actually wildly different to yours. Mine is a
might
heart.
have had the same five.
The same size, exactly. £5, a heart with a house. That's it.
But that's it, because the reality is you have to go out there and do the business. And I think particularly in this Instagram era where everything's very quickly digestible, everybody wants to look like they're doing a business and look like they're doing things. before they actually really go and achieve something. So all those different businesses, what did you enjoy the most?
Doing deals. I just love doing deals. It's like I used to buy and sell secondhand cars. You pick something up, you think you've got a good deal, and you don't know until you sell it, really. You know, and many a time you've got an idea, you've got a price in your head that you think, oh, I'm gonna sell it on for this, and then you know it comes to it and you get an offer or less, but you're like, oh, do you know what? Often the first offer is the best offer because it allows you to keep moving. You know, so I think doing deals is something I enjoy, and property is like that as well, because there's so many moving parts to piece together, which is part you enjoy, but then dealing with some of them parts sometimes can be a nightmare, so it's not so enjoyable.
Yeah, I think a lot of people often take property and try and differentiate it from other businesses. But like when I talk to people, and I've got friends that do flip cars and they're on the auction site, the actual process of, well, what can I buy it for? How much is it going to cost me to improve it? And what can I sell it for?
Same.
It's exactly the same premise. So I'm
Exactly the
sure
same. Yeah.
that probably helped to prepare you a lot
Yeah.
for obviously actually getting into flipping property and
Yeah.
investing in property. So I know that you've invested in commercial property, HMOs, apartment blocks. Where did you first start out? Like, what was your first property deal?
Rent to rent. First property deal was a 6-bed house. A lady had just finished probably over 100 grand refurb to a house, but she hadn't thought it through because the house was top heavy. So you created 6 beautiful bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a beautiful open plan kitchen living space. You know, like it was a Victorian house with a little side return, but the living room was a small living room. It was like maybe about 12 square meters living room. So anyone that come to look at it didn't want to take it because it wasn't really suitable for a family. So we had just started out. I had no track record or anything like that, but I was eager, I was hungry, and the estate agent helped convince her to say, yeah, give me a try. And then, you know, from there.
And what did that look like in terms of, because that was a long time ago, in terms of getting that across the line, what do you think the main barrier was that you had to overcome to get that deal done?
I think the obvious one is credibility. There's some things you can do, but you're limited to that. So really, the most important thing is to get buy-in from the people around you, buy-in from the estate agents, buy-in from the landlord, and just say, look, just give me a try, see how it goes. I'm wildly committed. You know, I'm going to do everything above and beyond. And just have a very, very clear message, you know, like your sales pitch or your elevator pitch. Be super, super clear with that, because then you can keep refocusing, you know, the prospect to that, and it makes a big difference. Because once they have sort of like an objection, you put, yeah, but you know, coming with me, I'm going to maintain your property because I have to, because you know we're going to have more tenants in here, and you know, just find the
I think it's understanding your own USP, understanding what your value proposition is for whoever you want to do business with. But I think also people often underestimate the relationship. So if people believe in you, I think at an early starting point, whether it comes to raising finance, trying to get a deal across the line, it's either going to be the opportunity so good that people don't want to miss out on, or that they believe in you so much that they don't want to miss out on working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can do both, but I think if you can focus on one, you're a lot more likely to be able to close that deal.
Relationship. Because people, everything's know, like, and trust. Everything you do is actually based off who you are. You know, you can have an amazing deal, but if someone thinks, he's got a great deal, but I don't really trust him, he's not going to go with you. But if he knows, likes, and trusts you, and the deal is okay, and he thinks, I believe in him, I think he can, you know, really do something, they're gonna give it a shot.
So you started off in that rent to rent space, but then since there you've flown and you've done so much. What's one of the most enjoyable projects you've done?
Obviously, I'm going to say the conversion. I'm going to say my commercial conversion. We converted an office building into residential apartments. The part that I would say that was enjoyable was because it included so many different elements. You know, it included underpinning, it included new build, included, you know, conversion.
I always try and make sure, because we got people at different stages of their journey watching this.
Yes, of course.
So for those that are not familiar, what does underpinning mean?
So underpinning is when you have foundations that are not suitable. So then you have to basically excavate around the existing foundation and pour cement to reinforce the foundations to make them suitable as per like structural engineers' calculations and drawings.
So you'd go out there, you get your structural engineer, and they'd say, look, for this build to be fit for purpose, this is what you had to do. So this was a commercial to residential conversion. And it was something that you bought with planning, or you went to go and get the planning yourself?
So I actually bought it with planning, but that's part of the reason why I bought it, because it had planning, but the planning was shocking. That whoever bought it obviously had seen the opportunity and said, well, let's get a quick planning application, push up the value, basically get it sold quickly. So that's what they did, and they obviously thought they'd won out of the deal, but they had missed something massive because they'd made really small units. They wouldn't have been very saleable. So went in, made a lot of changes to the layout, went back into planning a couple of times actually, and then, you know, pushed the value up.
So initially, how much did you purchase that unit for?
375.
375. Wow, where was that?
In Faversham in Kent.
Okay, nice. And initially, do you remember how many units it was initially for?
It was initially 6 units, ranging from 36 square meters to like the smallest was like 19 square meters. Yeah, it was tiny. Couldn't do nothing with that.
That's crazy.
But interestingly, in Faversham, they don't follow the national minimum space standards. So they've got their own adopted space standards. So you could have smaller units.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, why I think it's so great to have these conversations is obviously we've got the things that work in our area and the things of how we operate, but there's always more to learn. That's something that, you know, I didn't know about that area now. And it means that having a great sort of local knowledge means that you can find opportunities in places that other people would miss out just through expertise.
Absolutely.
So you bought it for, say, 375?
Yep.
375, Faversham, Kent, initially 6 units, but quite small units. And you went back into planning a number of occasions. And what did you end up with?
We actually got 7 units in the end, and we kept the commercial unit as well. So 8 units in total.
Nice. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people, when it comes to planning, they look at it as, okay, once I've got it, and that's it. But you know, smarter, more seasoned, shrewder developers will say, okay, look, let's go in for maybe some slightly more conservative planning initially.
Yeah.
Get that, because it can't be taken away from you.
Absolutely.
Once you've got your planning,
you got it.
And I think that's something that I definitely, you know, make sure that people have as a takeaway, that get your sort of bare minimum, because a lot of deals can have multiple exit strategies. In the, well, I know it stacks and I'm still going to make some money at 3 units, for example. So I'm going to go in for that day one just to know that I've covered myself. But once I've got that and no one can take it away from me, I can maybe even start some of the works, but know that you're going back in for a change to get 4 to 5 units.
That's exactly what we did, because I knew that worst case scenario, I've got a scheme that I can build out, so I'm not going to lose any money. But then I looked and said, well, how can I optimize a scheme and get some more money out of it, and then spend more time to sweat the asset to really sort of like rejig the layout a little bit. You know, initially they had a stairs and sorry, we're gonna have to cut that out, bro. Initially they had a stair at the start of the building, but I built a new stair column at the rear and it opened up the whole floor plan. So something simple like that can make a massive change, you know, and massive increase in value as well.
I think that's it. It's just all about maximizing value. So you obviously, when you buy a property with planning, this is the other thing. Sometimes I think people buy something on the basis, well, if it's got planning, I can build it. But sometimes what's been approved planning isn't actually functionally buildable, i.e. the foundations can't actually support the additional loading of going up further floors.
Absolutely.
And I think it is something that, particularly if you are starting out, you have to not just think about, okay, has it got planning, but also, is this development feasible from a construction,
physically be built,
or even a legal perspective?
Yeah.
Because I've seen stuff, you know, it's been sold with planning in airspace, but you still need the consent of the freeholder.
Exactly. So you basically can't actually build it because there's freeholders' consent, there's planning consent, you know, there's conservation areas. There's so many different facets of the process that you need to consider, that really you need to have a good understanding or have a team around you that can support you to understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to deliver.
What do you think your biggest learning curve was on that project, the commercial to residential?
I think it's a reinforcement rather than a learning, that as a developer, the decision's always going to come down to you. You're taking the risk, you know, your ass is on the line. So you have to make the decision, you know, don't rely on, you know, your professionals around you. Be willing to put your neck on the line and make the decision that's going to be best for what you want. Ultimately, it's all going to come back down to you, because you do well, you're going to get paid. If it goes badly, you're the one that's going to suffer.
Yeah, everybody else still gets paid
Yeah,
regardless.
they get
whereas
paid
you're linked
first,
to
you
profit.
eat last.
Yeah. And I guess confidence, because although you've got the team, you just mentioned that it ultimately comes down to you. To go from rent to rent, relatively low risk, scaling up to doing, 7, 8 unit development, what gave you the confidence that you knew you could deliver on a project like that?
I think I've got a good level of self-belief in myself. I think I've got a good level of technical knowledge, and I've got an amazing team around me. I've got a very strong network of people. I think that's the other key thing. When you have a strong network of people around you, when you face challenges, you can tap into them, and it can help you push forward, because no one knows everything, But if you have the right people around you, you can get pretty close.
I think a lot of people struggle with building a team and a network. For those that are still earlier on in their journey, how would you recommend building out a good quote unquote power team, which is the popular phrase?
Building a good power team consists of, obviously, architects, solicitors, and maybe a mentor, structural engineer. And I think to get these people in place, the best way to do it is to use them, to use them on other things, and build the relationship that way. Because, some people say, oh yeah, I've just, I talk to them, I follow up with them. Yeah, but you haven't actually done anything with them. You haven't seen how they perform. They haven't seen how you perform, because it's a two-way street. You want them to want to work with you and want to go out of their way to deliver your project the same way you want to work with them. So I think it's a mutual relationship that you have to sort of foster over time. And that's got to be built through delivering, really.
I think also, just to add that, is setting standards as well.
Yeah.
Because if you've got ways that you want to operate,
Yeah.
if you just allow somebody else to lead, they're gonna kind of curate the culture of your own business.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you say, look, this is the way I work. Like I work, whether it be you communicate over WhatsApp, over phone calls, over emails.
Yeah.
If you've got a way you prefer doing things, if you allow them to do it their way, you're always going to be kind of playing to somebody else's stream.
You have to set the tone. You have to set the tone, and if that means that it makes you a bit prickly or difficult to work with, that's perfectly fine, and if that means some people drop by the wayside, that's also perfectly fine, because along the journey, you're going to find the right people who align with your goals, and then you work with them, and when you find those people, it makes everything really easy.
It's better to have the little arguments and a little bit of confrontation early on,
Absolutely,
rather than at the point where you're locked in and it's really
Absolutely,
difficult to separate.
And a lot of people have difficulty with that, because they're like, I don't think I'm a very confrontational person, but when I'm on a work vibe, it's got to be my way or the highway. There's not very any room for adjustment on that.
And I feel like the question people are going to want to know is,
stop, because you're watching this video, I've got a treat for you. I'm letting you know exclusively the PBK community is back open as of the 22nd of August. Now there's going to be 20 exclusive slots. For our new members, they're going to get access to myself, my power team, my solicitor, my architect, and loads of other great people, weekly Zooms, and exclusive off-market deals. If you want to be one of the lucky PBK members, make sure you subscribe to the mailing list, which is in the description, so you get early access. Now back to the video.
like everyone knows, you say in terms of you finished this project, how much was your end? Because you didn't actually sell this one, did you?
No, I refinanced and held, yeah.
You kept all the units?
Yeah.
Who did you end up getting as your commercial tenant?
I have a pottery studio.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pottery studio.
By the way, little piece of advice, just from having a pottery studio in the past. Make sure whatever they're doing with their drainage is spot on, because pottery studios over long term, all of that clay building up in pipes, caused me some headache, and that's a learning curve that I had. So I'd say, definitely make sure that their waste disposal is A1. Okay, interesting. And what was your sort of GDV at the end of that project?
GDV come in about 1.5.
1.5. In terms of build costs?
Bill costs come in about 600, coming a lot higher than we initially planned for. But interest rates changed quite a lot. So,
but also I think which is often the case when it comes to conversions. Like you don't know what you're dealing with until you take back a wall, until you take off the plasterboard and realize, or you take up the floors and realize actually all of these joists have got to go.
And also the building was a sort of hodgepodge of, the original part of the building was over 100 years old, and then the last part of the building was I think it was a 1970s extension. Okay. So some parts of it you have to be quite delicate, and other parts of it you're like, oh yeah, this is in really good condition. We can just crack on. So,
And in terms of funding, how did you fund the build cost? 'Cause I think that's another thing when we talk about property. One of the things that we see is like, is the elephant in the room. The barrier to entry is capital. So people hear, okay, it cost this amount in terms of 375. The bill cost was 600,000. So you're pushing on the door of £1 million. How was that £1 million project funded?
A mixture, really. My own money, private investor funds, and some institutional lending as well. Yeah, that was the stack.
I think just understanding finance and understanding lending is really important. I think when you do want to get into something, if you know that you need an element of money, I think a lot of people shy away from it because even on a residential mortgage perspective, they'll say, oh, I'm not earning enough, or I don't have enough, without actually going to speak to a lender to work out how far away they are from their goals. I think if you are looking at potentially doing some type of development, small scale, larger scale, even a residential home, if you do have a conversation with a broker, they will let you know if you're ready to go, or actually the steps you need to put in place to allow you to be ready.
Absolutely. I think having power team, having a really good broker is key, because when you have a good broker, they can sit you down and say, right, this is where you're trying to get to. Okay, great. And then you can work backwards. Just like when you analyze a deal, you work backwards. And then you'll find out, okay, this is the amount of money I need. Am I comfortable even borrowing that kind of money? Or do I have that money myself? Or could I raise it from friends and family? There's different sources of raising money, but you have to be comfortable doing that and know that you can deliver. So I think it's really important to sit down with your broker and figure out the finance stack. I think really development comes down to financial structuring and deal structuring, because someone else might get the exact same deal as you, but you've got that knowledge and experience. You can structure it in a way and you can finance it in a way that you can make it work while someone else can't.
I think particularly in a market that isn't as buoyant as it was 4 years ago, there's a lot more opportunity to be creative when it comes to structuring, whether that be key undertakings, delayed completions, whether that be overrides off the back end. All of these things that can allow you to make a deal work that on a very straightforward, look, here's my money, take it now, it's mine, the deal wouldn't stack.
Absolutely. I employ all of those strategies, funny enough, as you mentioned, because finance starts accruing from day one. So if you can structure something with a delayed completion by 6 months, you've just negated 6 months of interest. And you get a key undertaking, you can actually, you can get in and out of the deal.
You know what, for the people, let's give them some explanations. So let's start with delayed completion.
Right, okay.
I mean, probably it's almost the key is in the name, but just for those that are not familiar, what does that mean?
Yeah, so with a delayed completion, it'll be something that you might exchange on. Let's say on the 1st of July, you might exchange on it, but you might not have to complete on it till, let's say, the 1st of January, let's say, for an example. So then you've got that time to either raise finance or, generally you're basically going to raise finance to figure out how to
or planning
uplift, exactly.
Because you've exchanged, you now have the deal security.
Yeah, effectively you've bought it. Once you've exchanged contracts, you've bought it. So
exactly. So you've got that. You then got the key undertaking. So if you can couple with delayed completion of a key undertaking, key undertaking.
Oh, so with the key undertaking, you basically get the keys. So you can go in and start the work you want to do in the property. If it might be planning gain, so you won't do much inside. But let's say with a commercial project, for example, you can get PD rights. After 56 days, you can go in, crack on, and depending on the scope of works, you might be able to finish before you're due to complete.
And that's when you see people that do great deals. Or speaking to some of my guys recently who've done some great deals where they were able to arrange a delayed completion with a key undertaking, which meant, as you said, all of the works were done basically post completion. So they literally bought on their bridge and then same day exited to a long-term product. So
Beautiful.
all they had, yes, you have a product fee still and sometimes a minimum term depending on who the lender is, but sometimes you can even literally get same day exit. So you drastically reduce your cost of finance, which eats into the feasibility of any potential deal.
Then that would be the difference between making a deal stack at maybe like 10-12% being sort of 25 to 30%.
Exactly that. And then the last one was like overages.
So with an overage, you can agree something with a landowner or vendor. Say, well, look, we reckon we're going to do the deal with this structure and we're going to meet this valuation. But with the overage, you could say, well, cool, anything over, let's say 100K, we'll split, or anything over 100K, you get 10% or 20%, So then it can be a win-win. especially if the vendor is a little bit greedy and he thinks, oh, it's going to be worth loads of money. You're like, well, I don't think it will be. And you're like, well, let's do an overage. So then if it is, as you say it will be, you're the one that's going to benefit. So
exactly that. So I think it's just understanding, like you can use either structure to realistically be able to make a deal work. But I think one of the key points is to make that deal work, you need to understand what it is your vendor wants.
Yeah.
If they need the money tomorrow,
yeah,
you offering them, a delayed completion isn't going to work, regardless of you offering slightly more money. So then an overage may make a lot more sense. You're like, look, I'll guarantee you this money day one, but the bit we're arguing about, we can leave that up in the air to have a potential of profits, which is a great way to make a deal work. So in your introduction, I touched on the fact that you've been in different areas of the business, to include rent to rent, commercial to residential, flips, HMO conversions. And I think a lot of people in property do jump between different strategies. Do you think that's been, a positive or detrimental in terms of your property journey?
I'm not sure, because I've got friends who do exclusively HMOs and have done fantastically well because they just churn them out. They've got it panned. But then at the same time, I think I look at myself as a developer. So if you're a developer, that means you can find opportunity in anything, and knowing different strategies allows you to deliver value. So, I think there isn't a right or wrong way. It's just kind of what suits you.
Definitely. I think I used to always, if I was doing a speaking, I'd always introduce myself as to say, I've done this. And over time I thought, is that actually a good thing or a bad thing? Maybe if I would have focused more, I think exactly as you said, it can work for either person. And I think as long as your focus is still on, let me live in how good the deal is.
Yeah.
So if you're doing great deals and you're exclusively doing HMOs and all your deals have great ROIs, that's amazing.
Yeah.
If you're bouncing between different opportunities, but you're picking, cherry picking the best opportunities in different fields, that can also be amazing. But I think a lot of it comes down to personal appetite for risk, for learning new skill sets, for how much you actually want to take on board and how busy you want to be. Because I probably find that comparatively, those that specialize may have a bit more free time because they don't have to learn so many different skill sets.
Yeah. But maybe they won't enjoy, expanding themselves into these different areas, because obviously then you have to be a novice again. And I quite enjoy learning new things. So I'm always sort of up for the challenge. And I think there's always more to be done.
Yeah.
And I think if I'd just been doing HMOs for the last 10 years, I'd probably be bored of that. So I think let's try some new things, let's expand.
It's a great segue there. So what's next for you in terms of projects? Because I know you said you had a good week.
I did say I have had a very good week, yeah. I've got a valuation back. It's come 150k over the purchase price, so that's great. I've got another deal. We're converting a house into 2 flats. Just building up the pipeline, really. So, can't be mad at that.
No. And how often, as a property investor and developer, are you looking for deals? Are you only looking for deals once you've finished your last one?
All the time.
So when are you looking?
You can't be serious about property if you're not looking for deals all the time, because property moves slowly. So from the time when you might think, oh, I've got one here, to the time when you're going to be ready to actually move on it and, need money for it, could be 1 month, it could be 6 months, it could be 9 months, it could be a year. So I think the most important thing is to always be looking for deals. The pipeline is one of the things I've learned recently. To have a great pipeline is key.
Yeah.
If you've got a great pipeline, in fact, by having a great pipeline, it allows you to be more picky with the quality of the deals you have. Because if you haven't got a lot of deals going, if you get something and you're like, oh, that looks okay, I think I'll make it work. Nah. If you've got a load of deals coming through, if you get something, it looks okay, but like, nah, I'll let that go because I've got better deals.
Definitely. I think that's why pipeline is so key. Beyond the fact that it makes you more efficient because you never have money sitting down doing nothing, it also allows you to benchmark any potential opportunity against what you already have. And I think the worst position to be in as a developer, because we're always hungry for the deal, is not having one, because that's when you start to try and massage numbers and say, desperate. Oh, maybe I can maybe the GDV will be that bit higher. Maybe the build cost will be a bit lower. Maybe I can reduce the finance cost.
And it never is.
And whenever you get to that point, you're in a dangerous place.
Exactly. And funny enough, you and me spoke about a deal, and I was looking at it and I was like, But because I had a pipeline of deals, I was like, nah, man, that deal's not really stacking.
Yeah, but it's very easy because, especially, I think we're similar when we speak. We actually enjoy, but there's some people that just do property as a job. We generally enjoy the process in terms of taking something run down, underused, underutilized, and making it beautiful, creating these family homes. So sometimes you can see that this is a great potential property from a artistic perspective, but from an actual financial perspective, it's not.
Yeah. That's funny enough. That's what we talked about last time. Sometimes you look at a deal and you're like, this would look beautiful.
Yeah.
Be great in a portfolio. I would love to stand next to say that and say, yeah, I've done that. But if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make money, it don't make sense.
Exactly that. In terms of like advice that you've got, like bearing in mind you've got a decade of experience for people, maybe they've done like, they don't have to have just started, or maybe they've done their first deal but are struggling to make that transition from property being a sideline to being full-time in property. Is there any advice that you would have for people in that space?
I've got some excellent people around me, so I've got loads of advice and things like that. One of the things I think is really good, let's say in terms of finance, is if you can't support the finance, don't do the deal. You know, and by that might mean you're doing a ground up development, for example, and you're taking on £1 million worth of debt. You know, what happens if for any reason you're stuck with it for a year and you just got to hold? Because generally that's all the risk is, can you hold?
Yeah.
You know, can you last? You know, so if you're in a position to say, oh, I can take on £1 million of debt, it's going to cost me 10k a month, I can ride that, then yeah, you can take on that deal. But if you can't, then generally you shouldn't be, you know. And if you're working outside of your skill set of knowledge, you need to know the people around you will support you to deliver that. You're not have a loose conversation. I'm doing this. Oh yeah, I can help you with that. And then when it gets time to it, when you pick up the phone, they're not answering because they're busy or they're doing something else. Then you're in deep water without, you know.
Yeah. So make sure you got those crutches, that solid foundation
That's what's up.
around you. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that is really good advice. Obviously, different people have different attitudes towards risk, and I know some people like that I talk to. I'm like, I'm not gonna name him, but every time I look, I say, "You're crazy."
Thank you for liking, commenting, and most importantly, subscribing. It doesn't go unnoticed. However, only 28% of you who regularly tune into the videos actually subscribe. Now, our goal is to get that to 40%. So if you could help me and hit that subscribe button right now, not only will it help us bring on bigger and better guests, but it will help us create better content for you, as you've already seen. Now back to the video.
But he smashes it.
Yeah,
like
that's
he literally, that's what he's done in the last 2 years. He's flying. But it's like risk and reward, and you can have. You can be a little bit more looser in terms of when you're stress testing deals, but you need to understand your potential to go all in. Because I've seen people that have, you know, been doing that 100 unit developments, and I see them 2 years later, and they're unfortunately back at an estate. There's nothing wrong, but in terms of where they were to where they went back to, they're back at working at an estate agent because they literally put every last penny on the line.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to do that, then, you know, I have to say, like, my hat's off to you that
Very
you're
brave.
that type of person. But don't go into a deal not understanding what your risk is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should be comfortable with the worst case scenario and be hopeful for the best case scenario. If you're comfortable with the worst case scenario, you know, and you're willing to lose your shirt, well then, you know, I wouldn't do that, but by all means, that's your choice.
That's it. And I mentioned at the beginning, I wouldn't say kicking and screaming, but I had to coerce you onto coming here today. And one of the reasons is, like, I actually know you. I know what you do. I've seen some of the amazing projects you've done. I know stuff you've got coming up. So I know you do what it says on the tin. You're a property developer, property investor. And the reason I want to get people like yourself on here more is there's a lot of smoke and mirrors online.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that are talking about things. And I think as much as you're not really on the socials that much, but I think you need to be, because not even if you don't need it for your business, from an accountability perspective of actually showing people, well, this is what it's really like.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're going to see.
You're right. I definitely need to do more stuff on socials. So watch out, stay tuned. I'm going to be posting a lot more.
That's good.
Because Kazy's been in my ear, and I know I do have to do it. And I always sort of pick up a little bit of pace, and then I'm just like, I don't really want to be doing all this social media stuff. But I think there's a sort of receipts perspective where people can see, he actually does what he says he does, which is super important because, as you said, the property industry is there's a lot of sharks in the industry, and there's a lot of people imitating because of social media now. Everyone wants to look like.
Yeah, no, that's it. There's a lot of actors, effectively.
Yeah.
People that are online
Yeah.
acting like their favorite property developer and are talking about
Acting like
deals
Kazy.
not like me. I'm saying like, but people that like people work. There's some great examples, and the reason we have this podcast is that we get an opportunity to shine a light on people that are doing them, and hopefully, what happens is we create an ecosystem of people are saying, okay, met Dennis, he knows what he's doing. He did this deal in Kent. I've actually got something really similar. Whether they're looking for a JV partner, whether they're looking for, just to sell the opportunity, but hopefully it creates that kind of internal ecosystem where deals effectively do stay in-house within,
absolutely,
like within the community as well, which I think is great.
Yeah, that's what we need more of. We definitely need more of that. Just more helping and supporting, really, because the property journey can be lonely sometimes. So to have good people around you that you can tap into, whether it be a problem or an opportunity or just some advice, that's priceless. And I think we should all do that more. So
That's it. In terms of finding those good people, have you been to any, whether it be networking events or just places that you go to not feel so alone and so isolated as a property investor?
I've been to some really good events, actually. I went to a Midas event that was quite good recently. We went to Lee's event, the Burn event. That was a fantastic event. They've had a few of those events. And once you're in those spaces, those are the sort of spaces that can really elevate your thinking, being around people who are on the same journey as you. Some people who are 5 steps behind you, some people who are 10 steps ahead of you. And then having access to them, what might be the biggest problem for you is something super easy for them. And you can pick up the phone and they're like, yeah, sure. Blah, 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 blah. They send you a quick email, your problem solved.
No, definitely. Because it's not always monetary. It's just somebody who's been there before and they've seen that, like I've gone through stuff and I said, oh, you know what? This one, I don't know if it stacks. I need cash flow this year. And I've spoke to somebody and I spoke to, it was Rowan from Featherstone Homes. It's like, oh, well, why don't you just add yourself as part of the development appraisal as the project manager and you'll get your salary paid out of the drawdown. I was like, oh, that's it. Like, so literally a conversation that potentially would have meant a deal we would have walked away from, or I would have been struggling with just off the back of having those contacts. I think it's great. So I think getting out of your comfort zone, not maybe being, because it's very easy to get overly confident in terms of, well, I've bought a house, my friends haven't yet bought a house, so I'm the big fish in the small pond. But I think you want to, on regular occasions, be like the least experienced in the room.
Yeah, I think if you can always be the least experienced in the room and keep your mouth shut and just listen, you can learn so much through just soaking up the knowledge.
I'm sure, like, depending on the household you grow up in, but a lot of people will be told this. I think we don't listen to this enough, that we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And like, love my Gen Zs. Love some of the young guys that I work with, but sometimes I'm like, bro, if you just listened more and talked less, the position that you would be in, the way that you could elevate yourself, you would fly, because you're great already, but just listening as a skill set is something I think goes undervalued a lot.
Yeah, I think, like you said, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. If you do that, you'll go far. Because also, perfect example with vendors. Once you get comfortable with the vendor, they like to talk. They want to tell you about their life story, da-da-da-da-da. They're not interested in you. Remember that. Just sit back and let them talk. Yeah. They'll probably talk themselves into your deal.
And before you, they've told you everything
that's it
that you need to tell them to make the deal work.
Exactly. And then you can structure it based on the information they've given you. They think, oh, this guy's giving me the perfect deal, but you've actually structured it in your benefit.
You're just giving them what they need that also works for you. Yeah. And I think that's great advice there. In terms of listening, double down on that, triple down on that. Brenton as well, Southport Media, please. I've been telling him this for years, but it's a lot of us, we need to do it as well. So we've kind of spoken about your journey in terms of how you've moved, how you've operated, but I actually want to find out a little bit more about what is the day-to-day life of a property developer actually like? Because
that's a really good question. What is it? It's a varied day. It's no 2 days are the same. I'm sure you'll agree. At some point, you'll probably speak to a solicitor or two. You'll probably speak to a lender. You'll probably look at some deals. What else? Follow up on any projects you've got going on. and just your life generally revolves around what you've got going on, the deals you've got at different stages. And so that's what your day is generally made up of in terms of work. It will be the deals that you're looking to acquire, the deals that you've got in legals, things you've got on site, and things you're trying to exit, and all the sort of functions around that.
And the reason I asked that question is I think what people envisage day-to-day life of a property developer being like versus what it actually is. Because what you just spoke about was a lot of time on your laptop and on your phone. And I'd say, what would you say in terms of your average, obviously deal, sometimes it's completely different if you're in the midst of a big construction project, but how much of your time would you say you spend between being on the phone and being on your laptop?
I would say you would easily spend at least 2 hours a day on your laptop, minimum. You would easily spend, depending, 2 to 4 hours a day on your phone. Some days I come home, I'm on the phone. My kids are like, Daddy, and I'm still on the phone. And I hate to do it, but work has to get done, you know? So I think you spend a lot of time on your phone, a lot of problem solving and stuff like that. And then, you know, sometimes during the day you're in your hard hat and boots, you're on site, trudging through the mud, you know?
Exactly that. But I think the reason I also touched on that is because of, we spoke about early on when it comes to sales, when it comes to managing relationships, but it's also transferable skill sets. A lot of people want to get into property and might come out of maybe some public sector roles or come out of finance. But a lot of those skill sets in terms of attention to detail, in terms of being able to analyze problems, are very transferable.
Absolutely.
I think it's, if you are looking to make that leap, it's what do you currently have at your disposal and how can you best use them in the property space?
Yeah, so identifying the skill set you have already and the skills that are missing, and then identifying how you can fill in the gaps. Because then once you've got your skill sets that you can double down on, and also it's very, very important not to try and focus on things you're not good at. Because if you're not good at something, no matter how hard you try, you know, you won't be that good at it. So you're better off doubling down on the things you're really good at, becoming exceptional at those, and building the team around you to pick up the slack in the areas where you're not so strong.
Definitely. We touched on it briefly as well, saying, you know, the property sector's slow. In a lot of areas, it's pretty archaic as well, whether that be in legals, land registry and stuff like that. Is there any, you know, tech or software that you currently implement within your own business that help you?
Well, thank you for the segue. I wanted to introduce one of a new project I'm working on with a friend of mine, Chris. PropertyTix. It's a development appraisal tool. We think it can really help all us property investors, developers, refurbers, because we're focusing on creating something that creates an end-to-end model with market appraisals. You know, we touched on like the GDV. So generally, when you're looking at a deal, the first thing you need to figure out is what's your GDV. And if you take it to anyone, the first question they ask is, where'd you get your GDV from? So we've created a tool that has a market appraisal module, so you can get really granular on your market appraisal, so you can get a very realistic and locked in GDV. And then from then you can sort of like build the deal. You've got a budget tracker, you've got assets and liabilities statement, you've got a folder for all your files, so you can sort of share them without using your email. You can share them in the app. So it's a very exciting project, and hopefully in the next about 6 to 8 weeks it'll be live. So
nice. Yeah, and I think I was speaking to Chris about it as well, and it sounds really exciting for a number of reasons. I think that's an area that people struggle with, and as soon as you're solving a problem, you know, it's already a win. But beyond that, I think if you can't get your GDV right, the deal's already out the window.
You've got a non-starter.
So something that can solve a problem that really underpins any is it or isn't it a deal is definitely going to be great. Speaking to Chris, don't know if he's told you about this, but I'm going to be announcing it here directly. But he's saying potentially, you know, the PBK community are going to get access to the initial version to help with testing. So obviously it's a win-win. We're going to bring on our sort of 80 to 100 plus members that can actually have a look at it, can test it for you, make sure it works functionally. And then hopefully, obviously, as you go out to wider market, it's going to be something that's going to really be able to shake up the industry in terms of helping more fledgling property investors be able to invest and do deal analysis with more confidence. It will
enable a lot of people to do a deal analysis like a pro. You know, because what you'll have is, you'll have an accurate GDV backed up by real market data that you'll be able to share. And also you'll be able to build your project on paper, you know, and it removes the Excel need, because I'm sure you, like myself, you're probably a bit of an Excel geek, but some of them, sometimes those formulas, they've got a mind of their own. You know?
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes when you actually click into the formula, like, how did I get here?
Exactly.
This formula is a whole alphabet. Like, it's
Exactly.
got all the way
you know
through.
it's wrong, but you don't know quite
where
how
it's wrong, and you're
you're
tweaking it, and then so definitely I think that's good, and look, it's exciting. I think it's a tool that's definitely going to help people. I'm excited. Your journey, I'm sure, is going to inspire a lot of people. I'm going to ask that you do try and do a little bit more on the social, just so people can see what you're up to. So they can get in touch with you, because you know what they say, closed mouths don't get fed. If you're not out there screaming from the rooftop, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking for, you're potentially going to miss out on some opportunities. For those that do want to connect with you, how can they find you?
best place to find me is Instagram, ratio_property, LinkedIn, Dennis Yentumi. Look me up.
I think that's amazing. I'm going to make sure that we not only, obviously, after getting you on this pod, we're going to come down to one of your projects, get you on one of the development tours, so we can hopefully, it will be your most recent HMO that we can go through. We'll go and see at the beginning on conception and see at the end, so people can actually see, they can get to know you a little bit here, but then actually get to see the quality of your work within your projects as well. So I think that would be amazing.
More than welcome. Thank you.
Amazing. So to find out about that project, make sure, as I said at the beginning of the episode, that you've already subscribed with your notifications on. You know where to find Dennis, you know where to find us. So catch us next week for another episode.